Summer is winding down here in the Northern Hemisphere, and a lot of people are starting to ask me, what can we do about vitamin D? Should we supplement vitamin D during the winter? What's the best way to look out for this, especially if we're brand new to this quantum and circadian lens and way of looking at health and sunlight, and we haven't necessarily been building a lot of vitamin D stores through the summer. So today I'm sharing with you a conversation I did with my really good friend Kris, who is the owner of EMR Tech. We're going to talk about this and some strategies that people can take as we go into the winter. I also want to let you know Kris is doing a flash sale today only for 24 hours. You can use code Sarah3030 to get 30% off at the EMR Tech store. I'll put a link down in the show notes for you. And we are going to do a contest to give away a free red light therapy panel that's going to be announced via email. You've got to be on my email list to be entered into the contest. So if you're on my email list, you're in the contest. So if you want to get on the list, go down to the show notes and subscribe. Check out the sale. We're going to talk about this. And just a quick little disclaimer, none of this is medical advice or meant to be taken as a substitute for working one-on-one with a practitioner. This is just for educational and informational purposes only. So please do just take it as that. And last little thing, I did start my end of summer leptin reset challenge today, and you can still join. Our first call is this Wednesday, August the 14th at 9:30 Eastern time AM. So if you are really needing a little boost and to prepare your body to go into the colder months, into the winter, really to get healthy, you can still join that challenge. I'll keep it open until Tuesday night. If you've been on the fence and you just want some extra help, this is a really, really great way to get that. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this. This is a live Instagram that I did with Kris on Monday, August the 12th, 2024. We're talking all about vitamin D and some strategies going into the fall. I hope you enjoy it.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a gorgeous, wonderful Monday. It is nice and hot here in Georgia. I'm going to wait for my good friend Kris to request to join. We're going to talk about vitamin D. This is a question that I get often. Now that, especially since we're heading towards the end of the summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, a lot of people are like, okay, I just learned about your information. I just learned about the importance of sunlight. Hello, everybody coming on. I'll wait for my friend Kris to ask to join. But a lot of people are asking, like, what can I do now in the winter time? Maybe clued into the idea that vitamin D supplementation might be problematic. How can I optimize this during the winter to maintain good health? So we're going to talk about that. And then, of course, none of this is medical advice. Oh, thank you. Everyone coming on, all the nice comments. But, nothing that Kris and I are talking about is medical advice or meant to be taken as a substitute for working one-on-one with somebody, just for educational and informational purposes only. And, vitamin D rich foods are very, very helpful in the winter. We can talk about that a little bit too. I'm still waiting for Kris to request to join. But ultimately, that is not going to seriously alter your vitamin D levels by eating foods. Ultimately, you have to synthesize that through the skin. So, still waiting on Kris to request to join. I don't even see him on, but hopefully he'll be here soon. I hope everyone's having a gorgeous day. And then also, if you're looking to optimize your health this fall, I have a leptin end of summer challenge that's starting today. I'm still going to let people join through Tuesday night because our very first call is Wednesday morning. So there's information on how to join that in my stories. You can still join that if you need extra help and support. Here's Kris. Hello. Everybody joining. So good to see everyone here on this Monday afternoon here in Georgia. Someone wants to know hydrogen tablets. I like the Axiom H2 tablets. And I think my code there is Sarah10. Where is Kris? I just added him. Oh, there we are.
Hey, we're just getting my cat. My friend she's helping me, and she just moved the cat. So, how's it going, Sarah?
How are
I'm good.
you?
You can hear me good?
I can hear you great. I can
Perfect.
hear you. Yeah. So I was just kind of giving background with everyone. Obviously, nothing that you and I talk about here is medical advice, just informational purposes only. But a lot of people are kind of moving into fall, winter here in the Northern Hemisphere, and they may have been clued into vitamin D supplementation, not necessarily being health promoting.
Mm,
We can talk a little bit about that, but they're looking for ways to support their bodies through the colder months. And we've got some interesting things to talk about here today. So, what's your opinion on vitamin D supplementation? Maybe we can start
sure,
there and I can give my.
sure. I've read some articles that there's some issues with like calcification, like specifically arterial calcification. So, especially in mice, it was pretty extravagant. So that's a little concerning. Theoretically, you're supposed to synthesize like 90% of your vitamin D out of cholesterol in your skin. So through ultraviolet B light. So I think actually you bypass like a lot of processes when you just get. It's not just vitamin D. There's a lot of things that UVB does for your body, like regulate your immune system to actually prevent arteriosclerosis. Who knows if it's connected with the vitamin D? It probably is, but I think this study, the new consensus on the vitamin D issue was, as far as I know, that it was the issues were due to vitamin D dysregulation, like dysregulated vitamin D activity in the body. And if you're supposed to get 90% of your vitamin D from UV light hitting your skin, then if you take it all orally, I think that would create some dysregulated activity because, I mean, it's pretty easy to think.
Yeah. Sorry, my son is banging on the piano right above me. Uh, Toddler life. But yeah, the thing about vitamin D that I think a lot of people don't understand is that the vitamin D supplementation is a fairly new thing. And we're only looking at one little portion, right? There are dozens of vitamin D metabolites that we're not measuring. We're only measuring vitamin D3 metabolite in the blood. We're not looking at what it's doing in the cells. We're not looking at the storage in the liver.
Mhm.
And I just don't believe that people that, because someone here commented, how do tribes live in the winter? Well, we've got cold, which allows the body to make infrared. We have more magnetism up north and we have more darkness. So the vitamin D receptor and the melatonin receptor, melatonin actually binds to the vitamin D receptor. And so if your endogenous melatonin production is optimized, and we can even talk about how red light therapy can
Mm.
support it, really optimizing your endogenous melatonin production, but we're meant to make more melatonin in the winter because melatonin binds to that vitamin D receptor. And so I think the conversation around vitamin D is just it's very misunderstood. And I've seen a lot of people have great results with it initially because it's a steroid hormone and
Mhm.
they feel good initially. It's like going to your doctor, getting a prescription for prednisone or a steroid, and they feel good initially, and then they have negative side effects. I've had people have major thyroid issues because it can accumulate calcium in the thyroid, accumulate calcium in other glands. And so at Jim Stevenson Jr., if somebody wants to really study this deeper, and I'm going to rip this talk down and put it up on YouTube. I'll put the chat I did with Jim a couple of years ago in the show notes, but if you're just watching on Instagram, you can go on my YouTube channel and watch that talk with Jim Stevenson Jr. Again, none of this is medical advice. It's just for informational purposes only. But I think informed consent is really important. And we have to be really careful about thinking we can just supplement with a hormone, especially one that we are, know just a little bit about and think that we can get all these health benefits from it when we were designed by nature to synthesize vitamin D and multiple metabolites of vitamin D, not just the one that we're measuring,
Mm.
in response to UVB light. And so, yeah, it's a nuanced conversation, and I think people need to be more informed about this. And Jim Stevenson Jr., his wife almost
died from vitamin D supplementation. And he has, over the last decade or so that he's been doing this work, had worked with like tons and tons of people who've had the same issue. And so again, informed consent, make your own decision, decide if you want to agree or disagree with me, and no hard feelings. But I just want people to understand the conversation about vitamin D that a lot of people have, even in the alternative health space, is missing a whole lot of context.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Jim Stevenson Jr. is his name, and he's a
I,
PhD researcher.
yeah, I've known him for a long time. He has a Facebook group. I think it's called like Steroid or something. But I mean, I've known him since the beginning of my company. We used to talk a lot, actually. So yeah, he's definitely an amazing resource. And you know, the thing is, we just don't know what supplementing vitamin D is. It's such a big, a crucial factor in our bodies. Like, um, so vitamin D and inflammation are inversely correlated, right? So like when you get like COVID, your vitamin D is gonna get crushed because your inflammation is gonna go up. And so it's super important because like inflammation is basically one of the leading factors of developing all disease. So you got to have good vitamin D, and if you don't, you're probably going to be inflamed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when we in the winter, we're meant to synthesize vitamin D in the summer and store it in subcellularly and in our liver as well. And so that's really how it was done since the beginning of time. We were outdoors. We didn't spend 90% of our time indoors, away from infrared, red, UV. We were exposed to these frequencies of light daily. It's only been in the last, couple hundred years that we're just these indoor beings, and only in the last number of years that we've completely cut all infrared out of the equation as well, which can actually, I've seen some research to show that red and near infrared can actually help you maintain your vitamin D stores, which is really interesting. But we're meant to kind of use up our storage that's in the liver and subcellularly in the winter due to infection, due to stress, due to sickness. It's there to help us. And we want to optimize our melatonin production as well to support this process, because melatonin does bind to that vitamin D receptor. That's some really interesting research as well. But for people who are like, okay, Sarah, like I get it, like, but I didn't really optimize my sun exposure in the summer. I'm really just starting this circadian stuff. Like, what can I do, right? Like, and no, using Jim Stevenson Jr. has a lot of information as to why using vitamin K2 and magnesium is not going to blunt the negative effects potentially of supplementing with hormone D. So just dive into his work. But let's talk about some things that people, that you've got, some solutions that you pop for people.
Yeah, I mean, so the melatonin thing, I mean, that's where I always encourage everyone to start. Melatonin. I'm not up to date with that information with the vitamin D stuff. That's super interesting, but melatonin regulates what's called the distance between your the proteins in your electron transport chain. And the more condensed that chain is, the faster electrons tunnel, the more ATP you make. And essentially, a mentor of mine who's kind of like a maven of this industry, his name's Jack Cruz. He said, I think it's like basically verbatim, that life is how fast you move electrons down your chain. So the blue blocking glasses, I mean, you're going to want to wear them during the day, and protect your melatonin at night with a red lens. So that's kind of the first way. And then obviously look at your sleep hygiene with like you want to turn the red light on at night. That can actually increase melatonin and balance out if you're watching any screens. So that's, we have little light bulbs to do that. You can do that with our glasses. It's kind of like the more economical approach, I would say, and it's definitely a good starting spot. I actually think it's probably more important than like, red light therapy or anything else. But we do have new lights that basically I designed and released a couple months ago, or maybe a month ago. So it's basically our standard panel, but we've integrated Philips FDA cleared narrowband and broad UVB, narrowband UVB, and broadband UVA. I mean, there's a lot of studies on skin issues, it can help. We don't make any medical claims like that. But essentially, narrowband UVB, in we use Philips FDA approved bulbs because that's like got the highest safety profile, right? Like there's other companies that are doing some different wavelengths of light. Like there's, like, for example, like 294 nanometers increases vitamin D the most effectively in the skin, according to one study, but it's got no safety data on it. Like, there's a reason why we use the Philips approved bulbs in our lamps, because there's so much phototherapy data on it. And we have to be safe first, so that's why we use it. But in one study, I think in 83% of vitamin D deficient individuals, exposure to a certain amount of narrowband UVB doubled their vitamin D status. So that's pretty significant in like a matter of days. So it's definitely a really good option. The UVA is located down the middle of our lamps. It will give you a little tan, but essentially what it's doing is oxidizing the melanin. Like, you're turning brown because your melanin is absorbing free radicals. Mm. And I can kind of segue into, like, some people are probably like, oh, tanning beds are bad. Well, I had vitiligo growing up, like the same disease Michael Jackson had. I had it all over my body, but I got it when I was 3. By the time I was 14, it had spread like all over my body. I had full-blown 4-door tanning beds in my bedroom, and like full-blown tanning beds, different wavelengths, like broadband UVA, isolated narrowband UVB, and I would have to punch in a password, and I literally tanned myself every day. But I wasn't trying to get tanned; it was different. In the phototherapy literature, is called minimal erythemal dose, and the erythema is actually the reddening of the skin. So when you get burnt, and it's UVB that triggers the reddening or erythema, the blood pools into your skin to harvest the light into your blood. It happens overnight. It gets into your blood and it gets stored in your melanin, and that's why you wake up less red, because it literally, your blood goes from your skin. It's called dermal pooling back into your vasculature, and actually, I mean, theoretically, it would reduce blood pressure, in the major vasculature. From that, you can literally pool up to 60% of your red blood cell mass in your skin before your organ systems fail. So it's actually really not even a burn, it's actually a natural human process of harvesting light into your blood. But essentially what I was taught to do was, you want to get the minimal erythemal response. So it's like your skin for white people. You're gonna want to turn like very slightly pink.
Mhm.
Obviously, isn't gonna happen with darker skinned people, but that's how you kind of find your dose. And you don't want to go. These are not tanning beds, they're these are wellness products, and more is not better with this kind of stuff, because you'll acquire more mutations, and so there's like a give take for everything. Personally, I'd rather have a little bit. It's not going to wrinkle your skin. It really doesn't. Not this kind of stuff. Tanning beds will, but still, like, I would rather have clear arteries and a couple wrinkles.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, doing it at this dose where you're just trying to get minimal erythemal response is not going to cause anything. In fact, it's going to make you look a lot more attractive, actually, because it's going to give you a glow. It's actually going to put a little color in your skin, and everyone looks better with the tan, and that's kind of why. But it's just not like a really synthetic tan.
Yeah, and a lot of people are kind of asking, and I had asked you initially, what's the difference between using something like a Sperity lamp,
Mm-hmm.
this device? Because that's what I did when I was pregnant. I kind of was like, look, I had just talked to Jim and just went through that research, and I was like, I'm pregnant, and I know the importance of maintaining vitamin D for my son so he can have healthy bones and build a skeleton, building blocks of life, super important.
Yeah.
But I didn't to add a synthetic D to my body because I had read and understood this work of Jim. And so what I did was a Sperity lamp, and I maximized my circadian rhythm because, like we mentioned in the beginning, if you don't optimize your endogenous melatonin production, you could put yourself at risk for a lot of inflammation, cancer,
all kinds of health issues. And so you really got to maximize your own body's endogenous melatonin production first and optimize your light dark cycle circadian rhythms. I think that's a baseline for anybody trying to do this. And this, again, is not medical advice, but what I did during pregnancy was, of course, very optimized circadian rhythms. And I did a clarity lamp with the Inferno behind me, and I would kind of rotate the lamps. And my vitamin D stayed, the D3, again, it's only one form of many, many vitamin D metabolites cells in the liver that we're not even measuring, but my level stayed at a 60 using that. And I felt really good. I felt energy. I didn't deal with seasonal depression. It was really helpful for me personally. And I'm in the 33rd latitude where we have UVB year round. So there's a lot of nuance here, but just to go back to that question that I know people are asking, what's the difference between what I did with the Sparity lamp and the Inferno? Because you don't want to, I think you should never really do UVA, UVB without red and near infrared because the sun is that way. What's the difference between the new product that you have and just doing that method?
Well, I mean, so we use narrowband UVB. So the skin is crazy. So essentially what we recommend is that you start with the red light, and then that'll build up your solar callus. It actually thickens your skin and it allows it to handle ultraviolet light. And then you'll introduce a narrowband UVB. So ultraviolet B that's the vitamin D wavelength or part of the spectrum, and essentially, oh God, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Um, hmm.
Start with red and near infrared, and then
Yeah, so narrowband UVB stimulates melanogenesis. So melanogenesis is the formation of melanin. So you built up your solar callus with the red and near infrared light. Then you introduce narrowband UVB. You stimulate pigment particles, and essentially it also relocates them and forms a supranuclear cap over the apex of the nuclear DNA and the keratinocyte. And then when the UVA hits, essentially it creates like a lot of free radicals or reactive oxygen species, and melanin, that supranuclear cap, like it acts as like a shield and directly like shields your DNA, but it absorbs all the free radicals, and that's why I actually turn brown, because it's oxidizing the melanin. Like if you cut an apple in half, it turns brown. Oxygen is like turning it brown. Same thing happens with your melanin. So we say start with the red light, build up your solar callus, induce some melanogenesis and relocation of that melanin, and then introduce UVA. There's really no point to introduce UVA when you have no melanin being produced anyways, because you're not going to get a very good tan anyways. So, but that's actually what's important to note. You have to, that's why tanning beds are bad, because they isolate UVA. They only oxidize the melanin and turn you brown. They don't initiate what's called the natural human photoprotective response, which is engaged primarily by in ultraviolet, primarily by UVB. But you know, and there's just a little bit about the safety of these things. Like I had to hire regulatory agents, and a lot of time and money actually went into developing this product, but I could have made it a lot cheaper if I did LEDs, but like a lot cheaper. I'm talking it barely would have impacted the price, but there's some like regulatory reporting requirements to FDA and stuff like that, because I actually found a unit once, and this was a red light. We tested it because we thought something was weird. It wasn't one of mine, and it had UVC diode in it. Okay. Yeah, so I mean that, you know, that kills all viral DNA essentially. Like you'd be skin cancer real quick. So I think that's why they do that. And you know, there's some products out there with LEDs, and like I said, they're not using like wavelengths with safety profiles on them, and you can't just like pick out uh, uh, like a wavelength in the UV spectrum and think that, oh, it's like taking vitamin D like orally and expecting there's not going to be any issues. Like you can't do that. So um, we use the one has the best safety profile. It's like the one that has really the only safety profile, and that's why well, that's actually why it's so expensive. Like one of those bulbs down the side costs $93 US. So Also, in front of it, according to my regulatory agent, essentially, what Health Canada and the FDA are worried about is the bulbs breaking.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have like 3 millimeter tempered glass in front of it. Um, and if those bulbs do break, then they can leak mercury.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so the cages on them are not really like, I mean, it will protect you from cutting theoretically to a certain extent, but it's not going to protect you from that. So I was just thinking, like, if I had a baby and like I don't want it exposed to mercury, so it's a safe product. I put a lot of work into it, and specifically on the safety end. Um, and I think our guide is really good for people who want to start using ultraviolet light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you want to go very slowly with it. And that's the thing I like about this machine is you can, I mean, you could just do red and near infrared, and then you could set a timer to do just like a micro dose of the UV
And that's
lights.
exactly what we want to do. We want to microdose this. This is not, yeah, exactly. Perfect.
Yeah, it's yeah, you want to microdose it and then also mind like circadian rhythms, diet. Like it's a full lifestyle thing, but I think it can really help people that struggle with, the seasonal affective disorder. They don't feel as well in the winter and I think it can give you a little bit of a boost. So,
So from like, I literally used narrowband UVB and UVA my whole life.
mhm.
Then I started making red and near infrared dye because I made the first one for my hair and I used to put it on the top of my bed, and don't do that. But I say that every time, do not do that because it fell over on my pillow. But I can tell you for sure that like people are talking about like red light being a performance enhancing drug, even that it should be banned. Like scientists are saying that. I swear, ultraviolet is so much more performance enhancing. Um, so, but the interesting thing about combining red and near infrared light with ultraviolet light is then you reduce inflammation via two pathways. Okay, because like red and near infrared light reduces inflammation by modulating what's called soluble protein mediators in the blood. So like cytokines, fractalkines, chemokines. Essentially, it switches those chemical messengers to a more anti-inflammatory message. And vitamin D, so narrowband UVB in 83% of deficient individuals in a certain study, and this is pretty uniform to be honest with you, it doubled their vitamin D status. And vitamin D is inversely correlated with inflammation. So if vitamin D goes up, inflammation goes down. And so you're attacking it from both angles. And then there's another component that I'm only starting to learn about alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone. I got to do some more research before I talk about that, but that's probably the third pathway in which these types of modalities can reduce inflammation. And I think Sarah might know.
I,
So
I love talking about alpha MSH. That's like one of my favorite.
yeah, there you go.
That's one of my favorite things to talk about. I mean, just in leptin and appetite regulation, it's huge. Just getting some UV on your skin via POMC is just like so powerful for appetite regulation, energy production, and so yeah. And people in the winter, especially if you live in like Seattle or one of these like far northern environments that where you're just not going to get a lot of UV in the winter, I think it can be something that's helpful. And again, you microdose it to the point where you're not hurting yourself because you can. I learned that the hard way with the Sperity lamp. It's like a delayed burn, and that's not.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
God, I
And
still
very strange.
stutter thinking about how I like burned myself so much with that thing a couple years ago.
So we talked about that, and that's why I have such limited exposure times. I don't want people using these devices inappropriately. Like this is like a microdosing thing. I mean, I don't know if this is an appropriate reference, but if you do too much mushrooms, it's not good, but if you use it potentially, I mean, there's research saying that if you use it like in a very responsible way, it can actually like help depression. So like, and literally like microdosing is actually like a good word because the actual dosing guide word is called minimal erythemal response. So
Yeah,
there you go.
exactly. So anybody watching, Kris is doing a little 24-hour flash sale using code Sarah3030.
at EMR Tech. You can get 30% off of any of the panels. We're going to do a giveaway also, but you got to be on my newsletter list. We're going to give away a red light therapy panel, and I'll announce the winner to that on Thursday. But yeah, I think that, you know, during winter, I get a lot of people that it seems like anytime I talk about the benefits of sunlight, the people crawl out of the woodwork that live in like Norway and Sweden and Canada and Seattle and like all these places where there's just not a lot of availability of UV. And like I said, in those environments, there is advantage to darkness because melatonin binds to that vitamin D receptor. So you want to really maximize your melatonin production through cold, through darkness. Your body can make infrared. Your mitochondria make infrared in response to cold. So there are advantages and more magnetism to those northern environments. You're not screwed. I don't want anyone to think like, I can't heal because I live up north. But if you do want to implement some UV into your life and do it in this microdose kind of a way, I think this is a good option. And, you know, safety profile, I think, is a little bit higher than the Sperity lamp because a lot of people are going to ask about that. I know
they use their own bulbs.
yeah.
Like I could have done that too. It would have been a lot cheaper, but to be honest with you, our lamps are comparable to theirs, except you're going to get red and near infrared light as well. You're going to get like, we use electronic ballast. I was at Jack Cruz's house and in El Salvador, and I showed him the prototype, and he was like, well, if you're going to do that, you got to use electronic ballast. And so yeah, you know, helping me out once again. I actually have to go down there. He has, Chantel has my Harley Davidson down there, so I'm gonna go ride down there. Yeah. But I think they make their own bulbs. I could be, I'm not 100% on that, but when I looked, I was like, well, they're not Philips, but you know.
Age, so I was always like scared if I knocked it off the bed or something that it could break, and that would not be pretty because yeah.
I actually got my engineer banging on the tempered glass with hammers.
Okay.
You know, because we did like, I think it was like 2 millimeter, and then it came here and it was broke, so we had to go thicker. And there's been a lot of little intricacies, but actually the electronic ballast reduced the flicker in the tubes, so that's why we did that. And then all of our UV lamps have our upgraded. I'm just going to say what we do because I don't really care. We use Meanwell power drivers, and essentially that has completely taken out the magnetic field in all of our units. We have the most powerful units except for one other company with a very small device, I believe. I haven't actually measured the device. But the Meanwell power drivers are very expensive. They're in our pro models. The difference between a normal driver is like, maybe it's like $5 or $10, and these are like 60 or 70. So we just absorb that cost. We don't even charge it to the customer. But yeah, it's yeah, they're really good products, so you'll like them.
Essentially, that cuts down on the non-native EMF exposure, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, both of those modifications do. But I mean, the Meanwell power drivers have completely taken away the magnetic field. It's gone. I don't think there's any company that's actually done that, especially for the power of our devices.
Mm-hmm.
No magnetic field is gone.
Yeah, a lot of red light therapy panels, and people kind of out the research. There's over like 10,000 studies on red light therapy now, so there's a lot of talk about it, a lot of hype, but a lot of times they're not using a device that's as powerful as your devices, and they're kind of trying to say, oh, look at all these benefits of red light therapy. And I'm like, yeah, your device isn't powerful enough to be making these claims. That's great, but yeah.
You know, also like with our units, if you sit in, like, they're designed to be used at like 12 inches. So if you sit in meditation pose, you'll actually be able to cover your entire body with our smallest lamp, which is like $2,000. It'll probably be, I think it's like 13 or 1400 on sale right now. So.
Yeah, and someone asked if we talked about supplementing melatonin. We did not really talk about that on this chat. You really want to maximize your endogenous melatonin production through darkness and through infrared during the day. You make subcellular melatonin in response to infrared, which you can also make via a panel. One of these red light therapy panels can be supportive in that as well.
Yeah, there's also literature about red light and you know, at night increasing melatonin in human athletes.
Yeah, so that's a good, you know, we a lot of times will turn on just the infrared and keep it on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
like see what I'm doing to get around, because my house is like a dark cave at night. I don't like to turn on
Yeah,
any overhead lights.
like me, and I smoke my head. I'm just back from Central America, and I'm actually living in like a basement,
Yeah.
and so that's really not a good idea.
No.
I literally knocked myself out the other day. Basically, I was like on the ground.
Yeah. I always tell the story of like falling down the stairs when I was like 9 months pregnant because I was trying to wear my red blue blockers. That's it.
Yeah,
Done. We're done with this stupid circadian stuff, because he was like so worried that I hurt the
yeah, yeah,
baby.
yeah,
The baby is
absolutely.
totally fine. He's almost 2 and he's like climbing off the freaking furniture and jumping down everything. He's fine. But yeah, I learned like, yeah, sometimes you do got to be safe. Like you want to protect your circadian rhythms, but don't be a dumbass.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, too much becomes, yeah, you got to do the things that are easy and that like makes most bang for your buck. Just get it done and it'll improve your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone wants to know, what does it mean that the magnetic field is gone? If you could just like reiterate that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, so all electronic devices, unless they're like battery powered, will have electric and magnetic field. Some will have a radio frequency field. Um, there's two different fields, and we've eliminated one of them, which is good. Yeah.
Yeah. So flicker and non-native EMF can be a big issue with some of the red light therapy panel companies. That's
Mhm.
or like, what do you think of this one? What do you think of this one? Like, I don't know, because I would like to sit there and test it with a meter. And I would also like to see if it flickers with you can use a spectrometer. You could literally just film it on slow-mo
Yeah.
with your phone and see if it flickers. You're going to negate some of those benefits of red light therapy if you've got a panel with a lot of non-native EMF or a high flicker rate. So that's why I'm like, don't recommend people just go on Amazon and like buy whatever, because you could run into issues and negate some of those benefits and dysregulate your nervous system as well.
Hmm.
Device that's flickering and have non-native EMF is going to pull your cellular water down 15 to 20%, according to the work of Dr. Gerald Pollack. So just something to be aware of. Yeah.
Hmm.
Awesome. Well, as I mentioned, there is a 30% off flash sale, 30% off with code Sarah3030 at EMR Tech. There's a link in my bio, and you can go to Kris's page as well. And yeah, anything else, Kris? And we're going to do a giveaway.
Yeah, I think that's all. If anyone has any burning questions, I'm happy to help. Me and Sarah will probably continue. I mean, we do them once in a while. So.
Yeah. And I'm going to rip this down and throw it up on YouTube this afternoon. So if you want to watch this without being on Instagram, I'll go subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's in my bio, and I'm going to throw it up there for easier listening.
Mm-hmm. And my company is good with our money back guarantee. Like the time frame, we'll probably stick to it. If you're a couple days after, it's not a big deal. But like, I think that you're gonna like the product. It's awesome. It's like having like a mini tanning bed in your own house. That's just more like elegant looking and actually works just as well. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I've got it upstairs in my bathroom, and I'm excited. I'm still utilizing the sun. That's what I was doing before we fall. It's my secret tanning spot in my yard.
Yeah, everyone got one. Hide from everyone else.
Yes, exactly. Got a little secret nook that I use, but definitely going to be using that, because it's, I live in Atlanta. Cold, it's not too cold, but it does get very dark and rainy for many months. And so I'm going to be using that machine this winter, and I'm excited about it. So
cool. Well, we're probably going to have to give you that neat UV Firehawk that I've got coming out. Yeah, that thing's crazy.
Oh, someone wants to know really quickly, is there a difference between the Pro Series versus the regular?
Yeah, so we use Meanwell power drivers in the Pro Series.
And that's that cuts down on the non-native EMF.
EMF flicker is gone. Magnetic fields are gone. The irradiance is slightly higher. The expected longevity is better. But keep in mind, like, our products were considered like top of the line before we even did this.
A21, and that's like my baby. Like, that's the thing I use even more than the Firehawk, to be honest with you. I love my Firehawk.
Yeah.
I get in my cold plunge and hop in front of the Firehawk for like 2 minutes. That's all I need. But my thing is my Inferno from 2021. That's not the Pro Series. Like I love that thing. So
Yeah.
the Pro Series is awesome, and the technology you've come out with is fantastic. But for anybody who's like, you know, I think
The price point, you know, I was gonna just change them, but my director was like, people like this price point, and like, you know, at a certain, it's like I can't sell like they're those drivers are expensive. I didn't mark it up anymore. I just marked it up to cover the thing because I was cool with you know the what I was doing before, but I wanted to release the product because people deserve to have the best stuff. And yeah, I mean, I personally I would go with the pro model. I don't make any more money. I think I probably make some less on some of them, but it's a better product.
and just to clarify, the new device that you have that's got
Yeah,
UV,
yeah.
some buy that and they don't need to purchase a red light therapy panel. Red and near infrared are already built
You got
into that machine,
everything.
and you can choose to never turn on the UV. You could just use it red and near infrared and not use the UV at all. It's just there if you want to microdose those two wavelengths. Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah, awesome.
Cool.
All right, Chris. Well,
All right, Sarah. Talk to you soon. Bye.
thank